You ever look across the breakfast table at someone you've loved for 22 years and wonder how you both got here? Not a fight, not a crisis, just scrambled eggs, coffee, getting cold, and another ordinary Tuesday morning beginning quietly. She's on her phone. You're watching the dog plodding to steal bacon grease like it's a carefully planned mission. And underneath all that ordinary life, there's a feeling you can't explain. Something survived, something stayed, something endured, like the two of you built something the world never expected to exist, and somehow it's still standing after everything. My name is Franklin. A lot of you didn't just date her, you married her, you chose the whole journey, you signed the paperwork, moved her boxes inside, and learned she somehow still loads the dishwasher completely wrong. You fought about money at 11:47 on a Wednesday night, even though both of you had work tomorrow morning. You did the whole thing, the wedding photos, the moving boxes, the compromises, and the 1,000 invisible negotiations afterward, and the world had opinions about that too. Stay with me, because nobody talks about what you actually survived. The wedding wasn't the hard part. You had a plan for one day. Marriage asked you for thousands more. You couldn't prepare for 7:14 on a Tuesday morning in February 1997. Nobody could have prepared for that. Her in her robe, you in yesterday's socks. The heater ticking softly, neither of you wanting to speak first. Both of you stare at the same cereal box. Because talking about Sunday at her mother's house suddenly feels impossible. That moment, right there, was the real marriage contract. Nobody gave you a manual for surviving moments like those. In 1990, there were only 211,000 black and white married couples in the entire country. Not trailblazer rare. Rare like you made a choice. The country itself still hadn't completely made peace with. Yet, no support groups, no podcasts, no television marriage that looked like yours without ending in tragedy or uncomfortable lessons. You had each other and whatever kind of life you could build together with your own hands and your patience. You thought getting married was the hard part. Then the first Thanksgiving happened and everything suddenly became much more complicated. You sat in that driveway for minutes longer than necessary, staring at the house and preparing yourself for another test. Not because anybody threatened you, because you already knew the calculations your mind was about to start making again. How much of yourself should you bring inside today? Which jokes work? Which stories stay in the car? Her dad came outside and offered a perfectly polite handshake, but somehow it still felt like an audition. Then her aunt said something small, something harmless on the surface, yet it sat inside your chest all evening. You smiled, you nodded, you passed the mashed potatoes, and your brain never stopped scanning the room. Once psychologists have a name for this. Now they call it racial battle fatigue, the exhaustion of constant social vigilance. Reading every room, measuring every reaction, adjusting your behavior so other people can remain comfortable around your existence. It isn't one dramatic event. It's thousands of tiny calculations that quietly drain your emotional battery over the years. And when you got home that night, neither of you spoke much because there wasn't an easy language for it. Some of you had the conversation in year 2. Others waited until year 12. Eventually it arrived anyway. The moment you finally said, "I don't think you realize what certain rooms actually feel like for me." And she looked at you with love confusion and genuine surprise because she honestly had never considered it. Not because she didn't care, not because she wasn't listening, because love and understanding are not the same thing. She carried her own fears, her own burdens, her own experiences. They were real, just shaped very differently. Marriage asks two people to explain invisible experiences that neither person can physically step inside or fully borrow. Then came the children, and suddenly every conversation became bigger than just the two people sitting at the table. Because now you weren't only building a marriage, you were building an identity for somebody watching everything you did. You looked at your child and asked questions nobody prepared you for. What do I teach first? Where do they belong? How do I explain the world to someone who carries both our histories inside one small and beautiful life? Your child was living in a country that didn't even have a proper box to place them inside, yet some of you watched them come home from third grade carrying a look you recognized immediately from your own life, that expression of a child who just explained themselves to somebody who was never owed an explanation in the first place. So you sat beside them and built language nobody had ever built for you when you needed it most. You told them you're not half of anything. You're all of everything you are, and that's more than enough. The people who need you to become smaller are usually trying to solve confusion that belongs to themselves. And then there were your friends. Some of them never left dramatically. They simply became quieter and more distant. The group chat moved on without you. The cookout happened without you. The invitations slowly became fewer and fewer. You kept telling yourself people get busy. Sometimes they do. Sometimes your choices simply change the way they saw you. You learned to carry that loss without turning it into bitterness. And honestly, that took longer than you expected. Here's the psychology underneath all of this. This is the part I really want you to hear carefully. What you developed over decades wasn't just endurance. It was the ability to live inside more than one world. Researchers call it bicultural identity integration. The capacity to hold different realities without collapsing either one into the other. You learn to move between families, cultures, expectations, and experiences without completely losing yourself in any of them. You didn't learn that in a school, you learned it at dinner tables, family reunions, and uncomfortable holiday conversations. You learned it while deciding in 4 seconds whether to speak up, let something go, or protect the evening. That isn't nothing. That's an emotional skill set most people never have to build and never fully develop. It cost you something real to build it, but what it gave you belongs entirely and permanently to you. You didn't just marry a person, you married history, family, culture, and a country still figuring itself out.